Well, hi everyone, it's Pete here from the Pain Toolkit and welcome to another Pain Toolkit video. Hey, I'm with a very special guest with me today, a very good friend of mine from down the gym called Emma. Good morning to you, Emma. How are you today?
Morning, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all the better for you asking me. Hey, listen, Emma, when we was at the gym the other day, you was telling me about well, we got talking about being I'm half nearly a vegetarian, but you was a vegan, and I asked you some questions, and you was telling me that since you've been a vegan, about the benefits you've had with around health matters. I mean, can you tell the viewers what sort of benefits you've had from being a vegan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I eat quite healthy anyway, what I would consider a healthy diet. So I'd have like probably 80-20 ratio of eating good during the week, and then maybe having like more indulgent meals and things like that. But I started to notice that I was just like, I had really bad IBS, especially if I ate like meat-based, like red meat-based dinners, and anything that was quite fatty. And the same with dairy. Every time I had dairy, I was just getting really lethargic and just feeling really rubbish. So I swapped to vegan. Well, first of all, I was vegetarian for 8 months, and then I cut dairy out just over 2 years ago, so nearly 2.5 years ago now. I get less headaches. I barely have IBS now. I used to get really bad bloating. I'd have really bad kind of fatigue. So after I'd eat a meal, about 45 minutes later, I would just crash. I would constantly have low energy. I get quite a lot of joint pain, so I'm hypermobile. So I'd constantly have achy back, and I'd constantly just feel like I had no energy. Like, it was blowing my mind. I was like in my 20s and I was just exhausted all the time. And then I started doing a mixture of changing up my gym work, but also changing my diet quite dramatically. So obviously cut out the meat first. Was a bit worried about protein, so obviously everyone was like, you've got to be careful because you go to the gym. But what I started to do was start tracking my meals just to make sure I was getting the overall balance of what I was eating right. And then yeah, just the energy was just insane, like so much more lifted, feeling that I was recovering better from the gym. Whether that's an intolerance based thing, I don't know. There's a lot of people that can't have dairy in this country, and we think it's other things causing issues, but there's a lot of stuff about what goes into milks and stuff like that that can be quite bad. And I think that was the biggest change I noticed, was especially get rid of milk and cream. Just such an energy lift. All through the pandemic, obviously that was kind of ironically when I actually went vegan, was right before they kind of put us into lockdown, so it's quite hard to get a lot of the meat alternatives. But we were still hitting protein, having a lot of pulses and grains, and I just started to find that I was just a lot better. I was sleeping better. I had some advice from someone down the gym about how to manage my diet overall, just generally, not because I was a vegan, but just because looking at being as healthy as possible. It might not work for everyone, but it definitely works for me. It's changed kind of my well-being quite dramatically. Even my skin is a lot better. I don't really get breakouts anyway, but just generally I can tell that I just feel a lot healthier, even just in how I physically look. So it's definitely made some big differences for me.
I'll tell you what, I'm really, because when we were talking about this down the gym the other day, the other week, and you telling me all about the pluses, etc. Like, I thought, because it really sort of started up a few green lights for me, really, about what, and I was say thank you very much for recommending those vegetarian sausages, like, because that's one thing. I mean, I've stopped because of my own health issues. I stopped eating red meat, and I may have a little bit of chicken, but I mainly eat fish and veggie sort of stuff. But the sausages, I mean, I really miss them. But the ones that you told me about, I won't do any advertising for them. Yes, I will. They're called This, and I'll tell you, I made myself toad in the old the other day. And totally delish that was. Loved it. But I mean, so when we started to have a chat, I was really thinking about it, and I was really intrigued that it's helped you with your back pain and stuff like that, and fatigue and whatnot. And because that's what you mentioned is it's what a lot of people with persistent pain they get. They get fatigue and stuff like that. So I'm always interested in ways to how we can get around that. But for someone who's watching this video and thinking to themselves, well, where do I start? Where do I go? I mean, what have you got any handy tips on what they could do? I mean, it's a big shift in it to go from not eating meat to not eating meat and dairies and whatnot. But would you say, I mean, what would be your handy tips to start them off like, you know, well, this, right, you're going to do the process, but what sort of tips would you give them?
I mean, the shift to going from a meat eater, especially a big meat eater, like I was massive. Like I used to eat my steak rare as it comes. Like I used to eat meat pretty much as I could. Like loved it. It wasn't like oh, I don't really like meat. So a lot of people think, oh, you must not like meat. And I was like, no, I do. But for me, just those choices, partly for animals, but also kind of that my version of my health. I started off just taking each category out. So I took beef out, I took lamb out, I then phased out pork. I didn't have a lot of pork anyway. And then I phased out things like chicken. We only had fish quite infrequently, but I cut fish out. And I think the biggest thing people do wrong with trying to change their diet is they try to do everything all at once, and it's overwhelming. It's very expensive to do it as well, because suddenly you're having to try loads of stuff. And I'm not out here trying to make anyone be a vegan by any means, but it's especially if you want to just make some tweaks to it. It's like I have a lot of friends who kind of practice what we call a flexitarian, where they do like maybe a week on, a week off, or they do most of their meals are plant-based. So I would say start with cutting your meats out, or at least filtering them down. So making like little swaps. So some people start with, like, say, a meat-free Monday, or they maybe do 2 meals a week where they go vegetarian or something, and that works because you've got to think in the same way that if you're exercising a lot and you need to up your calorie intake, you don't suddenly starve yourself if you're used to having 2,000 calories a day. You have to gradually phase back out of this, or go up or down, whatever you do. The same with meat, and I just don't think it's good for the body to suddenly get rid of meats. I think you should phase out, adjust it slowly, and then I cut out cream, and then I cut out yogurt, and then I cut out milk, and then I cut, well, actually I wasn't really having milk anyway because it was a trigger for me for feeling quite unwell. But I was cutting out, say, the alternatives that I was having, but for things, I was bringing in alternatives, sorry, for things like cheeses, got like milk, stuff like that. I had a lot of goat's cheese. So I did it bit by bit. I have like a page of recommendations and stuff as well, which I share with people, which I can give you the link for, because I started to work on what was on offer. Okay, well, I'll try something on offer because it is costly to try those meat replacements. But once you found a right replacement for something you like, it then becomes easier because that goes in and then you can work on the next category. So giving yourself that time is most important. Don't just drastically go vegan overnight. As I say, I was about 8 months vegetarian. And just found that it really worked for me. There's lots of opportunities in restaurants now. There's always vegan options or vegetarian options. Places are really great. I think in the last 18 months, it's massively shifted. So just take the pressure off. The best advice I had was someone who I know is vegan, and she said, don't label it. Don't call it vegan. Just cut things out, take your time, see what works for you. And, you know, if actually you want everything but you can't live without cheese, then that's fine. Just do that. You don't have to call it a label. And I think this is a problem. We get so hooked on, but what am I going to call myself? Well, you're not. You're just you. You have your dietary preferences or what works for you. And like, I wouldn't, even if there was something now that, I don't know, worked, whatever, and it was animal based, I still just wouldn't have it because I just don't think it benefits my body to have it. So I think the alternatives can work really, really positively. But your body needs to get used to having them in the same way it gets used to not having meat again. So just take your time and take the labels away.
Well, thanks, Emma. I'll tell you, I've enjoyed the video. I've learned even more from you. So those who are watching us, this is what Emma's suggesting about phasing things in and phasing things out. So, you know, what we're doing when we're managing our pain, we're trying things out. Did that work? No, let's try something else. And that's what self-management is all about. It's about finding out what works best for you. Hey, Emma, I know, you know, when I've seen you down the gym, like your work rate down there is fantastic. And, you know, I'm really impressed with what you do. So thanks very much for taking part, giving up your time to do this video. Hey, everybody, I'll see you again on another Pain Toolkit video. Take care. Easy does it. Be totally groovy. See you soon. Ciao.